All right, good evening, everybody. Hope everyone is having another wonderful Saturday night. Hope everybody had another great week. Um, Back again here with Mike and Anthony, almost mediocre sports guys. How's it going, Mike? How's the week?
Pretty good, sir. Pretty good. Nothing too spectacular throughout the week. Kind of calm, kind of quiet. Always a
Yeah,
plus.
no, definitely.
The authorities didn't show up like I thought they might, so hey, it's always a good thing.
No, definitely, definitely. Well, hope everybody comes back. Hope everybody we kind of get into a bit more stuff with you guys. This is kind of what Mike and I are talking about. I know last couple of shows we've done one list of just basketball, stuck to that, and then we just really touched on the playoffs, um, last week. So we're gonna kind of get into this a little bit with you guys. We're gonna talk, obviously about the playoffs, the games that we seen last week. Obviously, we've had one already played. There's another one going on right now. So we'll definitely kind of get into what we thought about the games, things like that. Also, kind of want to get into basketball. We're going to talk about top teams right now, where we sit with some of these teams, some of these players. Actually, kind of get into one specific player. We're going to get into that later. Talking about possibly where he fits as an all-time center along here, around there, and then well, I'll finish up with a little bit of college basketball. Kind of talk about the madness that's been going on there with everything because it has been pretty crazy. But first, what we really want to kind of get into is kind of what happened last night's game with Uncle Shay there.
Well, Shay Shay, Club Shay Shay,
Yeah.
going nationwide
So
now.
I obviously understand he got into doing it with Dylan Brooks. That was kind of the beginning portion of this, which kind of then led on to Adams coming into the picture. Next thing you know, even Morant's there. And also his father ends up getting into it later on. As people have seen. If you haven't seen the video, I know it's obviously viral about this, but. What were your thoughts about it, Mike? What were you thinking? Is there anybody at fault here? Is
You
there
know what?
anything, what did you see?
I didn't. You're the one who took me off to that because I think you were talking to me this morning. I think it was, and then I went and I looked at the video. The video I saw it too. I saw two videos. The first one, you don't really hear anything. It's just basically it's coming from the court side behind Shaq or behind Shannon, and you just kind of see what's going on, and you see Shannon obviously standing there at court side, and he's just jawing back and forth. It just what really kind of cracks me up, Bud, is you get these situations, and what I love about them is it's two guys having an altercation or a difference of opinion, and next thing you know, you got 35 guys that have to show up and break these fights up. They're not even fights; they're just
Yep. Just
disagreements.
shouting matches back and
But
forth until somebody comes at the bigger authority area
yeah,
and just gets these guys away from each other.
yeah, and then obviously like you said, Jaw's dad get into it, and obviously his dad said that, hey, I've got love for Shannon, nothing but respect. Obviously you saw Jaw in the background, and I don't know why he's being pushed away. He's 50 feet from the situation, and he's being pushed away like he's going to do anything. My advice to Jaw would have been, you might seriously want to contemplate what you're about to do. Have you looked at the size of this dude? I mean,
Exactly.
Shannon's not the guy you want to
They
mess
don't want
with,
the
all
smoke.
right?
That's what I heard. They don't want the smoke. With
I
all
saw the
his bull
comment.
jiving, he didn't want the smoke though. With all his bull jiving, they didn't want the smoke. And how this. This is
No, you
great
know what?
about
What's
this
gonna be
about
nice?
it because
Everybody,
here's the thing: is
everybody.
we're Bronco fans because we're from Denver. So Sharp is somebody that's very special to us. Wouldn't you agree, Mike? I mean, he's special to me. Obviously being the greatest tight end. In Denver Bronco history, and you could obviously argue if you wanted to even say he's probably one of the greatest tight ends ever too. So, but I mean,
Just don't say that to a Kansas City
right?
fan.
But I mean, in this situation, like you said, I think it was just a couple of guys just kind of jawing a little bit back and forth. We all know Shannon likes to jaw. He's as a football player, he was just that way, and just just in general, he's been that way. He likes to talk, and Brooks kind of probably took it the wrong way. I know they ended up blowing the game, I believe, last night too, right? Weren't they? They were ahead there, and they actually lost to Lakers still last night. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that was like a turn of events for it or not or whatever. But either way, it's kind of crazy that happened. Obviously, I'm glad it didn't turn into a bigger situation like we've seen in the past. Certain things like that. But it seemed like they kind of were able to kind of mend fences there in the end, and everything was kind of okay.
Well, I will say this too. This is kind of on a more serious aspect of this. This kind of speaks on, and we don't know obviously what really literally transpired between these two. Shannon gave the impression that it was a little bit of jawing going on back and forth over a period of time between him, and with the Grizzlies. But it also speaks on part of the problem we see, Bud, with fans are really starting to cross some lines with, when I was growing up, and you saw it too when you were a kid. I mean, yeah, you go to the games, but you don't get into shouting matches with players. You don't get into shoving matches with players. And we see this kind of thing, happening all the time now. Not all the time, but more than it
Yeah,
should be.
yeah, no, I agree.
And that's the kind of thing, you can't allow for stuff like that to happen, and you can't necessarily prepare for it, but it's just I don't know. Somebody needs to take a step back and say, "Look, I know you're talking a lot of smack, but let's just chill for a little bit
Yeah.
and let's just get back to what we're here for, and that's a basketball game." Now, I'm interested though to see what Skip's going to say.
I was just gonna say that I'm kind of looking
Yeah.
forward to come Monday. You know me, I'm a big Undisputed fan. I watch this, I watch it myself too, so I'm a big fan of them.
Although I'll tell you what, the way things have been going with Skip and Shannon lately, Skip might want to just, he might want to walk softly and put that stick down.
I'll tell you
before
what
he
though,
just
that Skip
shit,
Bayless,
but
he doesn't bow down to anybody though. I mean, he sticks to what he does, and I mean, I don't always agree with him 100% for sure. There's a lot of things he said, a lot of things he's done. I'm just like, oh, I don't agree with that. But I'll tell you one thing about him is he sticks to his guns for sure, and he doesn't back down from anybody.
no, and you got to respect that. I mean, like you said, he sticks to his word, and he'll tell it to
Yeah.
your face. He did with Shannon, and he'll whether he's right or wrong, he's willing to stand there and take it or give it back, and you got to give him
Oh, I
props for
agree. I
that.
agree. Definitely. Well, all right. So moving on, we're actually going to get in now to the NFL playoffs. Is what we're going to do. Crazy games. A little bit of crazy games there, huh? Obviously, one of the games that we didn't expect to happen was the Dallas Tampa Bay game. I believe we both had Tampa Bay moving on in that game. Correct, or did you have Dallas winning that?
No, I did take Tampa Bay, but all props to Dallas. This is the deal with Dallas. I know a lot of people were down on Dallas going into the game. They were basing it on their previous playoff history. I was too. I think a lot of people were obviously, but props to Dallas. What they did was with the talent that they have, they beat a team they should have beaten. And I'm not taking away from what they did. It was great. They played some beautiful football against Tampa Bay. But for all the Cowboy fans out there, if I tip my 10-gallon hat to you if I had one. But beating Tampa Bay is not playing the San Francisco 49ers, folks. This is night and day. Unfortunately, I think there's going to be a reality check for Dallas tomorrow when this game takes place with San Francisco. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But back to the Tampa Bay game, it was a great performance. Dak probably with the best game I've ever seen this man play.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree.
Laser passes, touch passes, running when he needed to, great decision making. They just, as a team, they look great. The only criticism I had, and it's continuing to be a problem, I think, with Dallas, and this is what they're going to have to look at tomorrow night when they play the 49ers, is their running game just isn't what it needs to be. If they really want to continue moving forward, they're going to hopefully, if they want to do that, they'll have to address that, and they're
Yeah,
going to go for better
what Zeke had
production.
was like 11 for 21. He was like a yard a carry type thing. That's what he was. So yeah, they definitely need to find a running game. I agree with you in that. But I'm kind of going off what you said, Mike. Obviously, I definitely don't think after watching that game that Tampa Bay deserved any reason to be in playoffs. Obviously, there's a reason that they made it. It's because everybody else in that division is terrible. But watching that game,
Well, and also this, Bud, real quick. See, that also speaks to there has to be a line, I think, I get it. You win the division, but I'm sorry. 8 and 9 records, or a 7 and 10 records, or whatever it's going to be. That's unrealistic. It's not going to change magically because of it's the playoff game. It's just not. So that's the kind of thing you potentially are looking at if you continue to let this happen. And maybe that's something the NFL needs to address somewhere down the
Yeah, no,
line.
and I agree. It's just for me, I was looking at this game. I think I just only thing I seen was Tom Brady for this game is I just seen the name. And I still just believe that he's that guy that could still do it. But watching him play, I mean, it wasn't just him, obviously. I mean, it goes to a whole bunch of other things. But um, watching him play and making some of these throws, I mean, he looked like he was struggling. It didn't look like a throw where, you could tell he's just kind of throwing it away or getting away from the defender. No, I mean, he was struggling with some of these throws. And it was crazy to see. I didn't I always wondered. You always keep hearing, when is he going to fall off the cliff? When is he going to fall off the cliff? And now I think in that game is when you finally notice that he's starting to fall. That's where he's starting to go is because of that. He just doesn't have the arm strength anymore. He obviously, I mean, he's never had mobility, but he can move around in the pocket. He doesn't have that anymore. Um, but going back to this game, I think now I'm kind of glad that Tampa Bay didn't win because I think Dallas gives San Francisco a better game. I think it can be closer with them
Oh
playing.
yeah,
I think
definitely.
if Tampa Bay did win that game, and obviously it would have been Dallas making terrible mistakes to lose that game, things like that. That's the only way Tampa Bay wins it. But with this, I think it's being a whole lot closer. And if that defense actually shows up the way that they did against Tampa Bay, they do that again. Obviously, you're going against. We're still talking about Purdy. We were high on him still, but this is a really really good defense he's finally going to face, and if that's how good they're going to play, and they're going to rush him, I think this game could be a whole lot closer than people think. And I think that if Dak's on, coming back and playing better, this game can go either way now. And I know we kind of, regardless, whether they play Tampa Bay, whether they kind of played, Dallas, whatever. I think we were kind of high on the 49ers, but I'm a little worried, especially if Dallas's defense has came back, if Micah's going to be disruptive like that, they could really make a huge difference in a game.
You know what I like about San Francisco, bud? You know this too. I mean, a real, people that really follow football, they get where I'm going with this too. San Francisco, they're not asking Purdy to save the game. They're not asking him to uh, be more than they expect him to be right now. He's a rookie. He's playing great. He's playing within the system. He's managing the game. That's all they're asking him to do. That's all they're asking him to do. And as long as it remains that way, they should be fine. Like you and I talked about, I think it was on the last podcast, that there may come a time where he's going to have to step out. If they're going to win a Super Bowl, Purdy probably is going to have to have some plays where he literally has to be the person making the play, whether it's running the ball, obviously throwing the ball, or just a decision he has to make, second, third, fourth options, if he's looking to pass. But with the Dallas game, if they can proceed accordingly, it's game management. Dallas isn't able to force them. This is the thing with Dallas. Again, I go back to the Tampa Bay game. You're playing a slow team, an aging team, like you talked about, Bud. Brady, I love Brady. You like him too. I like Rodgers. You like him too. But I'm to the point now. I don't understand the infatuation with these two guys. I just don't get it anymore. I mean, Rodgers didn't even have one single game this year where he threw for over 300 yards.
Yeah.
Yet all you and I seem to hear about, and Football Nation seems to hear about, is wow, man, Brady's going to be freed up. He can go here, he can go there. He can go to Carolina, he can go to Vegas. We get him, we'll go to the Super Bowl. It doesn't work quite that easily, folks. The dude is still 45 years
Yeah, I
old.
agree. I
And
agree.
granted, he's fighting for the time, but it's just not just you don't just put Brady or Rodgers on a team anymore and it just clicks and it's to the Super Bowl. It doesn't work
No,
that
I,
way.
I, I totally
And
agree
so
with you.
Dallas,
And they both kind of have showed exactly kind of where they're at right now in their careers. Especially with the way that Tom Brady kind of finished this game. Like you said, Rodgers not throwing a 300 yard game. That's kind of insane for that one.
yeah,
I can't believe that. When you told me that, I was like, oh, I had to look this up. I was like, man, he's actually right. This is true because now that really shows in a way how much Devontae really helped Rodgers out a lot too. I mean, you got to believe. I mean, at least he's always at like 1,500. So 1,500 yards of his, 4,000 or whatever that he throws comes from Devontae and stuff like that. And for him to not get a 300-yard game, says a lot about the difference that he made for that team. And this is kind of what I talk about. This kind of brings me back to this where we were talking about like second episode or whatever about MVP status, that these wide receivers don't get enough credit. It's always got to be the quarterbacks, always something like that. But it looks like in this situation, Devontae Adams really did make a difference for that team.
Oh yeah, definitely, bud. And I mean, obviously there was a little bit of drop off when he made it over to the Raiders. Him and Carr, they just never established that connection they had at Fresno State. But those things happen. But and we both think that Carr, essentially, were his numbers stellar? No, but I don't think Carr deserved to be treated like he was by the Raiders. Hopefully, wherever he transitions to, it'll be a better fit for him, and he'll be more productive in that system. But again, back to the whole Brady and Rodgers, infatuation. Brady out there, and people would say, "Oh, Mike, Anthony, come on! I mean, look at what he did in the Dallas game. He had over 300 yards. Those are garbage yards. They weren't getting their butts kicked. By the time he's putting up these yard numbers, the game's out of hand. It's over. And yeah, they sort of made it semi whatever you want to call it at the end, but the outcome was already decided. They weren't going to ever win that game. So it's just I struggle with the infatuation that the sporting nation seems to have with these two guys. I mean, I get it. You and I have appreciation for him. We never stop having appreciation for him. Brady's the GOAT. Rodgers is a Hall of Famer. But you got to get over this. These guys aren't the quick fix and take it to the Super Bowl anymore. It doesn't work that way. You guys got to move on from this. And that's what Dallas in part caught when they beat Tampa Bay. And again, nothing to take away from nothing away from Dallas. They're a good football team. That was a beatdown. But the team is old. Brady's he's really beginning to show what's going on with him now. And regardless of these magical treatments that he goes through during the season and off season, eventually you just can't do it anymore. But again, back to our point, props to Dallas. They played great. They beat a team they should have beat. But the bigger statement comes tomorrow night, and that's with Dak too. I mean, you've got to repeat that performance against the 49ers. You have to.
Yeah.
If you lose to these guys, and if you lose bad, you accomplish nothing. So the pressure's all on Dallas tomorrow night, I think.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Definitely. It is, and it's always been that way for Dallas because, they're the ones that everybody's been waiting for them to win. They have tons of Dallas fans out there that have been waiting. They obviously it's been a long time for them to win this first road playoff game though, 30 years.
Hey, but question for you real quick. Do you think if Dallas loses, let's say Dallas loses, let's say they lose by 16 points. Probably won't, but let's say just they do. Do you personally believe that would get McCarthy fired?
Maybe he might. I mean, they might. So? I guess it would have to be. It would depending on how the game went. If it's bad turnovers causing things like that, probably yes. But if it's just can't move the ball on the defense, just things weren't going well, they're just Jerry Jones looks at the game and be like, man, San Francisco just played tremendous. They just played great. Then I probably say no. Then he probably won't get fired in that sense. But I don't think that these players really, like I said before, I don't think these players really adapted to McCarthy very well. I don't think they really like him as much.
You think he's a good coach?
I think he's just a good coach. Yeah, he's good. He's not great. I don't see him being great. I don't see him actually ever getting to like a legendary status, obviously, or anything like that. But, I mean, he's just a good coach. I mean, if you give him the right tools and pieces around him, he can make it work, just kind of like how he is now. But I don't think he's that coach to get to that next level again. I mean, I know he has. He's obviously won one, but I just don't think he's that coach right now to do it, though, in my opinion. But, yeah, so moving on to the other game that was kind of crazy is we were talking about it when we were last on the podcast because it was going on as we were filming, but that Chargers Jacksonville game was insane. I mean, man, never seen anything like that before. 27-0 down, and Jacksonville comes back to win the game 31-30. Your thoughts on it, Mike?
Well, I tell you what, we talked about that a little bit after we got off the
Yeah.
show last week. I could have used a lot of words regarding, the Chargers coach that you don't put on a broadcast, especially kids are potentially. To the ladies out there, a lot of respect to you ladies too. We don't want to use foul language in front of you as well, but in no way is that a game that any professional sporting team, any professional football team should lose. You can't be it's one thing to be up 33 nothing in a regular season game if you're the Colts and you let the Vikings come back. But if you're talking about a playoff game and you're up 27 nothing and you allow this to happen, I don't know where your game management is. I've struggled with this since they hired the guy. Um, I don't think he was as aggressive with his play calling the entire season this past year. With the fourth and twos and the fourth and threes at your 7 yard line, that kind of ridiculous crap. But it falls back on the coaching staff almost completely. People could flip the switch and say, yeah, well, we can look at, but that was a great comeback by Jacksonville, and it was. But also, Peterson is a better coach. He's the better coach. They were the better team. I know that Lawrence struggled in the first half, but he made up for it in the second half, as did the whole team. But literally, if the Chargers had approached the game correctly, situationally in the second half, why you give up running? Why do you
Just
stop
stop
running the
running the
ball?
ball, and the other,
That's
yeah,
part of running the
and
clock.
the worst part about it is just not the fact that they gave up that lead and never had a turnover. Never having a turnover. That is insane. That means they just
No,
kept getting stopped, kept getting stopped, kept getting stopped, and just kept giving the ball back. Jacksonville did not have to get one turnover in that game on the comeback, and that's insane to me. That you're able to make a comeback like that, and kudos to Trevor Lawrence too, in my opinion, because the fact is the kid throws 4 picks in this game, and for a kid that young to throw 4 picks, you're down 27 nothing. You see it a lot of times that they just kind of give up, and they're just like, all right, this wasn't it, or there's always next year. We'll try to come back. And he rallied his team together, and he got him that win. That he put him on his back, and he ran with it. So a lot of credit to Trevor Lawrence for that too.
hey, but real quick, and what we're talking about now goes back to the Tampa Bay game, and then I'm going to ask you my question to you. But let me reference the Tampa Bay game real quick. But my question to you is going to be: do you believe the Chargers should have fired their head coach? So my point. So you're telling me that Leftwich with Tampa Bay was the whole singular problem with your offense. This guy was not the problem. They had success prior to Bowles coming on. Team went to a Super Bowl with this guy. All right, as their offensive coordinator, yeah, all of a sudden he is the guy that you decide can no longer do the job. I'm sorry, that's not the point here. The point is, if that's the case, you need to let your head coach go too because he failed. He failed just as much as Bowles or just as much as Leftwich did. And I do not understand that. You're gonna let Leftwich walk. And hey, I tell you what, Denver, there's your chance as an offensive coordinator. Reach out to the guy. Maybe he'll want to talk to you. I don't know. Maybe reach out to the enemy when it's all said and done. That could be your offensive coordinator. But Bowles needs to show. He needs to shoulder a lot of the blame for that loss too. This is a guy I've told you that struggled with the New York Jets. He's now struggled with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And you can't use Leftwich as the scapegoat, not entirely for this. So that for Tampa Bay to me was a huge mistake. That nothing positive comes with it. They're not convincing me of anything with this with Leftwich being the sole reason that they couldn't compete against
Well,
Dallas.
let me. So obviously, for your first question, let me go back to this: is should Staley have been fired? I think so. In my opinion, you know how I
Yeah.
felt about him. I've always felt that he's not head coaching. You know, he's just not there yet. He doesn't make good calls late in games. His timeouts are bad. His challenges are bad. Decision making as a coach just isn't there when it comes into clutch performances. Same thing with Herbert. I told you like that. I don't know about Herbert, same way, but they kind of seem like they're the same person, which is kind of why they don't really mesh well together. And I think they probably should go a different route. Obviously they should have made the Super Bowl. Sorry, they should have made the playoffs last year, in my opinion. But they, poor coaching decision making, again, caused them to lose that game to Vegas last year. Same thing with this year. I
Mhm.
mean, you don't blow a lead like that. I'm sorry, but you're up 27-0 in the playoffs like that. You need to hold that lead. You have Austin Eckler, one of the best. If he's definitely a top 5 running back in the league right now, top 3 you could argue if you want to, and you don't utilize him. Makes absolutely no sense. Now, I know they're down Mike Williams, but here's the thing: everybody's hurt. And I'm going to kind of roll into your next part. All these injuries, like I said, I'd love to sit there and say, Todd Bowles kind of deserves another chance, like you and I've talked to you about, which I think he does with his own team. Plus, they got to get players back from injuries too. They did get Jensen back, which I thought would have helped him out a little bit, but it didn't. Unfortunately, they still got beat up pretty good, but I totally agree with you. I don't think Leftwich was the problem. I think he is a scapegoat for this. I think what they are going to use it for is for maybe Bowles to get the job, and then he kind of maybe gets his own team together, because that team just looked real old out there, and I think it's time for them to start getting rid of a lot of them, and kind of bring in a lot of young players in, but maybe not necessarily rid of a whole lot of them. There's still some veterans on that team that can make a difference to get to get players ready to become great. So I would try to see if I can keep some of those veterans around if possible. But obviously, I think Brady sounds like he's gone with his press conferences. It didn't seem like he was trying to stick around in Tampa anymore. So at 45, I told you before, he's not going to want to stick around. He's not going to go to a rebuild. He's going to go somewhere that's established. Obviously, the talks have been Las Vegas is a place where he can go. I mean, if he goes there, he has to understand, too, that the defense is just bad. So he's kind of in the same situation as he is right now. Does he have better receivers? Yes, that helps. He's got a better running game, that's for sure, because Jake was being the leading rusher this year. He had the rushing crown. He does go into a better situation, but in my opinion, are they there yet? I don't know. I mean, if that's really Tom Brady, that's what we've seen right now that we watched on Monday night. If that's him, I'm a little worried, and if I'm Vegas, I might want to go a different direction, and whether it be the draft or if I'm going to maybe trade to get a different quarterback or something. But I wasn't impressed with anything Tom did. I know he threw for over 300 some yards, but towards the end of the game. But that's all that's just like the garbage stuff that they put in. So. Yeah, like I said, I agree with you on the Leftwich thing, but he's gonna obviously go somewhere. I don't expect him to be whether it be a head coach or be an OC job again. He's gonna get hired somewhere. I mean, he's very very good. He's very very smart. I love his play calling. It didn't work out. I think a lot of it, like I said, if you ask them, they're gonna say, well, we didn't run the ball well. We ran the ball great. 2 years ago. What's the difference? We completions. I mean, Brady still passed the completion percentage. Or the completions for a season. He beat him on that. So he could still do well as an OC. I mean, maybe it's better for him that he gets out of there anyways.
But again too, I mean, we're sitting here beating on the Chargers for everything they did wrong. And again, as we both know, props to Jacksonville. Obviously the first half was awful, second half was fantastic. They earned the right to advance. Didn't work out so well today against Kansas City, but they still, I thought, and we'll get to that, but they represent themselves quite well. They stayed within the spread. I thought that, and actually, if not for the fumble, and not the fumble at the fourth quarter, who knows? I mean, they could have been real close. They could have been down 3 at that point, and still with a chance to do something. But the fumble pretty much killed it. But I thought Jacksonville played well. So they're a team that's up and coming. Lawrence looks great. I think he's got the head coach he needs now in Peterson. So I think the future's bright for
definitely. I
Jacksonville.
agree about Jacksonville. Obviously they've already played. They were one of the first games earlier today, and they did lose 27-20 to the Chiefs. But that game was a lot different than I expected. I had Kansas City kind of running over Jacksonville, but Jacksonville held strong. Good plays on special teams. Agnew was kind of the reason that they set up their first touchdown with the nice run back on the kick return. But Lawrence played strong. He played really, really good. I believe, obviously, the thing is with Kansas City that I kind of want to touch on is just how crazy it is that Mahomes gets hurt the way he does, comes running back on the field, and the guy still just plays like there's nothing wrong with him. He makes still a touchdown on the drive. It's crazy, man. This is why, in my opinion, and we talked about ranking where our quarterbacks are. Mahomes has to be at the top, and this is insane. The fact that this guy can get hurt the way he was. He's limping, out of the huddle. He's limping down the field. He's limping on the play. And he still he's still throwing touchdown passes. This is insane. And this is why Kansas City's so good too, because I'll tell you what, these guys are strong and they play with their hearts, and that's all kudos to Andy Reid. I think Andy Reid also needs to start getting up there as far as greatest coaches, to be in the NFL. And if for some reason Kansas City goes on and wins, this Super Bowl this year or something like that, he definitely needs to start getting up there in some talks, because this Kansas City team is insane right now.
But yeah, and to your point on Reed, and let's give props here too. I mean, Mahomes gets hurt. It's obvious he's hurt. Jacksonville is making adjustments to try to take advantage of this. So at some point, they have to put Chad Henne in the game. Chad
comes
Henne
out
with the system of the enemy, and Reed takes Kansas City 98 yards for a freaking touchdown.
Exactly.
This guy played 5 total downs the entire season. 5. And this guy comes in a playoff situation where the game is still undecided, takes him 98 yards, no problems, nothing. And they score. And do you want him against Cincinnati or Buffalo? Probably not. But man, that system is something else.
It is. It's crazy. And, obviously, Kelsey, too, he set the record for the most catches in a playoff game.
98 yards,
and he had 14
touchdowns.
catches. That's the most in a playoff game for him. So, I'll tell you what, like I said, watching this game, watching, the way Mahomes played, the heart he had to go back out there and play the way he did, obviously, says a lot more about him, as a player, as a person, too. I loved seeing it, and I loved watching. I was rooting for Jacksonville. I kind of wanted to see that go a little bit. I know I picked Kansas City to win, but it'd be kind of crazy to see Trevor Lawrence keep that train moving. And I was a little crazy because I was like, it started off, they went down there and scored right away, and I was like, man, this could get a little crazy. It might be that score that I said, because they scored so easily on the first drive and stuff, and Jacksonville came back and answered and stuff, and next thing you know, I was like, we got a football game here, and just a little bit too much defense for Jacksonville, though. Put a lot of pressure on Lawrence. That last turnover, straight up the gut, just, strong safety was right at Lawrence, and he just kind of threw it up there for the pick. So that's one thing that Lawrence just has to do, is read the defense a little bit better, which he will. I know he will. He's only going to get better. He's up from here. I just see the kid getting better and better, but decision-making, he definitely needs to work on, for sure, but I think he's going to be fine. And I think Jacksonville, I think we'll see him again next year too, after watching them play. I thought it was a great game against them.
Yeah, I agree with you too, bud. And real quick with Kansas City, you and I know that their running game is sometimes shaky. It's never a guarantee week to week, but today was pretty solid. Check about 98 yards. He actually surprised me. If you look at him physically, he doesn't even look like a guy that could physically be a running back and get you 98 yards. He really doesn't. His speed is pretty solid. He impresses me, especially when he gets outside. We saw the one play where he swung it to the left and took it up the side. But he impresses me for his size. I'd like to see Kansas City's running game be a little bit more consistent, but that's just the way it plays out. But they have obviously so many weapons that can cover that deficiency. But again, like you said, props to Jacksonville. Nothing, if they stay healthy, nothing but bright lights ahead, I think, and possibly a Super Bowl in the next 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. I think
but props.
I love what they're doing. I love what and obviously, what is it? They should be getting Calvin Ridley back next year too, right? So that's just another weapon for them with Ingram at tight end. They also Christian Kirk, great season with them. That was a great pickup for them to get from Arizona. Obviously, Marvin Lewis, is that who I'm talking about? Marvin Jones Jr. Thank you. Trying to think in my head. I was like, I even told my head thank you because I couldn't remember. God. But yeah, lot of good wide receivers on that team, and then ETN is a good back for them. Obviously, him and ETN played together at Clemson. Him and Lawrence, so they already have chemistry together. So definitely look forward to watching them and see what they can do as they move on next year. But next game that we're going to talk about is that Cincinnati Baltimore game, though. Obviously, looked like Baltimore was ready to score there, and Hundley just leaving it out there unprotected, huh? And dropping right into Hubbard's hand for a 98-yard touchdown, kind of seal it off.
Yeah. I mean, people could knock the guy for sticking it out like that, but we know that that's typical quarterback, scoring technique in that situation. Push the ball out, at least make sure it cracks the plane, and there's your 6 points. And in this particular situation, the guy just happened to be in the right spot, knocked the ball loose, and the guy takes it back. And obviously, it was a 14-point swing. Games basically, it's not over, but you know how momentum goes. It pretty much that sucks the life out of you when you lose points like that. You know, you love Baltimore's defense. You love them as a team, and that's props to you. But you keep reminding me just how good they are. It was hard to sway me, but I came away impressed by what they are as a team, particularly on the defensive side. We all know about Harbaugh; he's a great coach. I'm not going to get into the Jackson thing. I've done that before, and it is what it is. But to the guys that actually were on the field trying to win this game, I give Baltimore props. Um, uh, they should be solid again next year. And that's the thing. You look at the court. Huntley's not a bad quarterback. Is he a Super Bowl quarterback? Probably not.
I mean,
Nice
according to
to
J.K. Dobbins, if Lamar plays in that game, they win. So, I mean, I know you're saying that to the guys out there, and I know we've talked about him, or whatever, that you don't know for sure. You think he could probably get out there. He at least could try. We don't know exactly the extent of this injury too yet. But the thing is a lot of these other players still have a lot of faith in him. So I don't know what that says about Lamar. I don't know if that's just just kind of that buddy thing. If that's just JK, letting out his anger, in spur of the moment type thing. Lamar's there, we win. I know he had a really good game. Why didn't they hand it off to him type stuff? But those are all, coaching decisions. That was the decision the coach made. Same thing. Pete Carroll had the same thing. Why didn't you give it to Marshawn? At the one. Why do you throw a slant that gets picked off by Butler? There's so many different coaching decisions that are made out there that could make or break. It either works or it doesn't. If it works, you're a hero. If it doesn't, the blame gets placed on you. You got a lot of angry folks. You got a lot of angry players, things like that. Do I believe that Lamar Jackson wins this game if they play? I think he probably does make it a lot more competitive. He definitely does give him a slight more edge to score. Now, either way, in that situation, the way that the play was, maybe at that point you just say, well, at that point maybe you just say it could have happened to anybody. I guess. I mean, as a quarterback, if you're trying to get over the pile and you just want to try to break the plane or something like that, maybe Lamar does the same thing. Maybe it's something that if he goes and reaches over, and for some reason it gets knocked out of his hands too while he's jumping over. I mean, do they feel the same way about Lamar that way if it's him, or is this just because Hundley's in? That's something that we don't really know for sure.
Yeah, and I tell you, and again, props to Baltimore. They played well, and like you mentioned, they had a chance to win the game. It just didn't work out. If you look at Cincinnati, I tell you, I brought this up last week. I've talked about this before with Joe and this stat about if he's sacked 5 times or more. If he's sacked no more than 5 times, they typically win, which is just embarrassing. But this sort of, leans towards their problems with the offensive line now. And being down 3 starters, you feel for a guy in that position, regardless of whether they're talented like Joe or not. But if you're in the quarterback position, you hate to see a QB have to go out there and face some of these lines that teams offer up. That they have to face for 4 quarters. Again, Cincinnati, good football team, but boy, I'll tell you what, and they survived Baltimore. But moving forward and what they're going to potentially have to have to hope for against Buffalo, that could be asking a lot now. I think we both had Buffalo obviously
Yeah.
winning the game,
Yep.
but this with the offensive line now, and if Joe can accomplish this, wow, maybe maybe he's the MVP. I don't
Yeah.
know,
Definitely.
but that's a tall order for any quarterback. I don't care who it is, but that's what he's faced with. And that's what the Bengals are faced with. They were able to escape Baltimore. I just don't think that's going to work out so well tomorrow. Sorry, Cincinnati fans. We love the Bengals. We do. We like Buffalo too, but not looking too good for Super Joe
Yeah, it's
right
gonna
now.
definitely be tough. Obviously, I know like we they are out some players. Jonah Williams is out, the left tackle, I believe. Also, their right guard is also out for them too. So big, excuse me, some big players out for them. And Buffalo's defense is really strong. They're gonna probably pressure a lot. I feel like there's gonna be a lot of blitzes coming in towards Joe's way. But we all know that Joe can stand in the pocket. He could take a hit. He's definitely a strong quarterback that way, and if he needs to make a play, he will. He'll definitely do it. These
Hey,
are two of the
bud,
best
what
I think playmaker quarterbacks to watch, in my opinion.
hey, what do you think's going on with Josh? What's the deal with the turnovers? What's going? Is it? You think it's some of the injuries? You think it's just he's not seeing everything?
No,
What do you
I
think's
think
going
I
on?
think what it is I think he's literally I think he's trying to get back. I think he's trying to get back into
Think
I
he's
think
pressing
so.
too
I think
hard?
he just wants to get his revenge. I think he wants to he's obviously going to have to go through Cincinnati right now, which is going to be tough. Obviously, I think Cincinnati is a great team. I'm not solid on that O line, at all. So I do pick Buffalo to win this. Obviously, I thought it would be a closer game, but if the offensive line doesn't, withstand, Buffalo can win this game by 10, even possibly. But I think his problem is I think he's just trying to put him on his back. I think he's trying to do everything for this team, and he's doing a little too much. And the other thing is we've seen it happen. I mean, think about we've seen Favre, we've seen Elway. These are strong arm quarterbacks that thought they could fit through anything, and he does that a lot sometimes. He just thinks like he sees that hole, and it's just like I can make it. I know I can get it there, and you let it go, and you just don't see that other defensive back sitting back there to to pick you off. But I think that's what it is. I think he's gonna get better from it. I don't think he'll, in my opinion, kind of my big stat of the thing is I don't think he's gonna make a interception. I don't think he's gonna make a turnover at all. Sorry, um, in this game, I think he's gonna play well. I think he's gonna do what he needs to do. He'll throw for about 275, 280, something like that. He'll rush for about 50 yards maybe or something like that, 40 or 50, and he'll play a really great game. That's that'll get them the win in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how this plays out. Believe it or not, I still think there's a part of me that thinks, Joe, he's a talented guy. I like Bad Boy, but things are starting to change a
Yeah.
little bit, and it makes me kind of wonder. We talked about this. Buffalo, just at times seems to be something that's just. It seems like there's something missing, and you can't put your hand on, you can't put your finger on what the problem is, but it seems like there's something that's
Yeah.
not right. And so I wonder about that now, obviously with Joe on the offensive line. But if we go forward, and if it is Kansas City and Buffalo, or if it is Kansas City and Cincinnati, now Patrick with a potentially serious ankle issue, and you know how that
Mm-hmm.
goes. I mean, he was playing off adrenaline, tonight, and they had it taped up, so obviously it wouldn't hopefully damage anymore. But so now things are starting to change just a little
Exactly.
bit. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out going forward. But so I'm curious about the game tomorrow. Joe with the offensive line, but Buffalo, there just seems to be something that's just not quite
Yeah, and I
right.
don't know what it is. Like I said, I know definitely I talked about them needing, a good running game. That was something that I felt like they did better this year with, not utilizing just Josh as their running game, but, getting Singletary in there and stuff like that was key for them on the running game. So they didn't run the ball well. I think like a little over 100, like 107 as a team in that game. I think you want them to be higher than that. I think you want that running game for them to be around the 120-ish, 120 to
Mhm.
125. If they can get to 130, 140, I think they're doing really well. But obviously,
Yep,
we
I
know
agree.
that and that's not with Josh. I'm talking other running
Yeah,
backs, and then you can put Josh in there with them with his 30 or 40, and put him in that like 170, 180 or something like that, something to that range. But he's got to make stop making mistakes though. He's got to stop turning over the ball. That's a huge thing for them.
Yeah.
That definitely puts a damper on your defense. If they get a good stop for you guys or something like that, and you turn the ball right over right away, they get tired out there. You gotta rest your defense too. And for the team's sake, just those mistakes like that can hurt a team mentally. You have a good drive or something like that. Kind of that, like going back to the Tampa Bay game, that first that drive with Brady getting down to the goal line, and what seemed to look like maybe he was trying to throw it away, but instead it looks like he didn't get enough on it to sail it out of the back of the end zone, and he throws that pick to Curse or whoever it was, but those are the mental mistakes that could really hurt a team. Because you're down there, you're getting ready to score, and then boom, you turn it over right away. So he can't do that in this game since he's too good to allow a lot of mistakes to happen. So definitely needs to not make mistakes. Which, like I said, I think that's why they'll win. I don't believe he will. I think he'll learn from it. I think he's working a lot on it too.
I think so too. But
definitely. So I think now we're going to move on to our next topic here. This was great. Obviously, the only difference was, and I believe you still have the 49ers win. Let me go back to this because we did our list, of our playoff teams. So the 49ers we still have moving on. So everything kind of still works out for us as far as teams moving on from this, and then it looks like maybe the Eagles might be moving. I think it's 28-0 at halftime right now in that game. So
I don't think it's going to be a
Jacksonville exactly. That's what I was just going to say is we're doing this podcast again. There's another team down by almost 27, and if we end this and the Giants come back, and it could be next week when we do this, everybody's gonna be like, well, unfortunately, I don't think there's any games on Saturday of next week, right? Are they both on Sundays, or are both games next Sunday, Mike? Or are they? Okay,
yes, sir.
Obviously we won't be doing a podcast during the middle of the game, so we don't have anything like that. So, but.
And right now, if I'm looking at Hurts is 17 or 12 of 17, 118, two touchdowns. So the yardage isn't quite there.
No, they're dominating.
Completions are pretty solid.
But next thing we're gonna move on to is we're gonna talk about some NBA stuff. Moving on to the NBA, but we're gonna talk about one guy in particular, the Joker. And Mike, you are so high on him, and we both love him so much, but. Kind of give me your thoughts about him. On is there a chance that he can become the top center to ever play this game?
If we go back to that list the video list that you did, I think that was our third podcast, correct? That was our third podcast where you did the essentially the 12 greatest. And obviously the centers that were on that list with Chamberlain and Russell and Shaq and Jabbar. Obviously, I think you and I agree that the championships would help his case considerably. If you go through your career without, let's say, he doesn't have one NBA Finals appearance, that fair or not, that's going to be a big part of the consideration, and that would work severely against Joker. I like, we can talk about the Nuggets as a whole. You and I do that ever so often. And what they lack and what they excel at. And here recently, as you and I have talked during games and that type of thing, we like, especially what we're seeing currently with the Nuggets, and Murray and these guys and their bench production. I think that if it wasn't last night, it was the night before, the game before, they had 55 points off the bench. And that's the kind of thing that they're going to have, and that wasn't always there over the last few seasons. And everybody's going to talk about the injuries to Murray and injuries to this person and that person, and it's true. Murray's basically a 2-year project now, just in trying to recover from injuries, and finally, possibly getting to where he's playing how he was expected to play. I think it's still a little bit early to jump on the Murray bandwagon and say, hey, he's fully back. Let's see some consistency moving forward. Like you mentioned the other night, we still got a half a season of basketball left before we even get to the playoffs. We haven't made the All-Star game yet. But with Joker, I tell you what, but I've seen a lot of centers play basketball. I've seen a lot of centers play basketball, and I was fortunate to see a lot of the good ones. I can't really remember, Chamberlain that well. I remember a little bit. Jabbar, I remember. Elijah one, I remember. Obviously, Shaq, those type of guys. Ewing, everything. Jabbar. I'll tell you what, but as the center position is currently constructed over the last, I'd say, decade or so, what this guy is doing with the basketball is absolutely insane to me. You're talking about a guy whose career stats right now, his career stats stand at 10, and 6. That's what he's averaging for his career. Those are his stat numbers for his career. As you talk about what he's doing right now, it's 25, 11, and 9. So he's literally averaging nearly a triple double a game. I watch his games right now, and I told you one time, it's funny. You can watch football players like I could watch Elway. You could watch Elway. We could watch Brady. And these are the kind of guys that if there is a chance for them to win a football game, if they have that last possession, you feel literally like they're going to get the job done. I watch Joker play basketball right now, bud, and I mean, as long as they're not down 15 points or something like that, if it's reasonable, I can look at this team, and if he is out there, I literally feel like this team is going to win the
Yeah.
game. This guy is that dominant. I haven't seen court vision out of this guy, and you made a good point about this. I think it was on the last cast or the one before that, but he's a center with guard vision.
No, he is.
And
I
he
agree.
is.
And even going back to this, I know you had mentioned what he's at right now. He's at 25, 11, and 9. But that 9, if you look at it actually all the way, it's 9.9. So he's actually just a point off of being at a triple double for the season. Now in the last 10 games too, he's played 8 games, which they've actually got him a little bit of rest, which is nice. And this goes back to what I've talked about with you, and I've always said this: the Nuggets need help. They need to help Joker out. And Porter hasn't been that guy. Murray wasn't that guy. He had gotten the injury too, but he just wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing, in my opinion. Now all of a sudden that's changed. Things are different. Murray's playing great. Porter's, scoring like he should be. Off the bench, Bones coming off the bench has been great. Braun has been playing well off the bench himself. Brown too. There's a lot of players that are stepping up when they need to. Gordon's another guy. I know he's been out there trying to get into the All-Star game. I know he said something about if he'll only get into the slam dunk contest if he's in the All-Star game. So he's making his case to get in there, which he has a really good case. He's played really well himself. But this is what they need. But in the last 10 games, he's 22, 11, and 11 in 8 games. So he is averaging a triple-double right now in the last 10. This Nuggets team, obviously we'll get into, to some stuff, with them here in a few. But just kind of going into this, I think Joker, myself, has a great chance when it's all said and done, what he's doing, to become then on that, whether it be on that Mount Rushmore of centers or the greatest ever, just with what he's doing. It is insane at the center position. To see this is insane. You know what I mean? Because nowadays you see everybody kind of moving positions. You can put LeBron in any position you want. You can put KD 1 through 4. A lot of these guys swap around a lot, things like that. But Jokic is a center. He's a pure center. You can't really put him anywhere else if you wanted to. But the thing is with him is his court vision is insane. His shooting ability is great. He can shoot it from deep. He can pop the 20-footer. He's a good finisher inside. And the thing is, this guy does it without any kind of a vertical either, which makes it even more crazy too. And he's not fast. He's not fast at all. He's just his IQ. The IQ level is so good with him that he understands how to play this game so well. That I think with what he's doing and just being a complete center, he's not really moving around positions at all, and they don't make him at all. That when it's all said and done, and you're going to look at his career stats, with everything, he's going to be up there in everything. And I think he literally could surpass and become the greatest center to ever play this game if he stays on this. But the only difference is he at least needs appearances. One ship, I think, can get it for him if he stays on this pace. If he gets one championship and keeps going at the pace he is, keeps doing what he's doing, maybe gets into the top 20 in points, maybe top 10 in rebounds, up there in assists, whatever. If he can do that, get maybe one championship, I think he could definitely, be the greatest center to ever do it. Now, if he's just to get on that Mount Rushmore, he just at least needs some appearances and keep doing what he's doing, in my opinion. But he has to get multiple appearances. I'm talking at least 4 appearances at least if you're going to try to put him on the Mount Rushmore, because there's all these other centers we talked about. Even Wilt's 1-2. Obviously Bill, we're not going to go there because he's not going to touch that. And then you got Kareem also up there. So those are 3 for me already. And then you got Shaq, who's got 4.
Yeah.
Up there with Hakeem. Hakeem's got 2. So those guys were all on my list, as far as centers and stuff like that. So to get up there, you're going to have a lot of appearances and play really, really well, and just, maybe not get, or you at least need to win 1 to 2 at least to get up there.
Yeah, when you did that list, Bud, and we talked about that night, and I said, I broke it down into stages of great, all-star, that type of thing. But at the very top of that list is where you fall into the legend category. But for me, legends are the guys that they change the way the position is played. Whether it's just what they do offensively or what they force you to do defensively, it's that type of thing. And with Joker, this is what you see from this guy. I mean, I'm not kidding. Folks, I mean, if you're a basketball fan, and I don't care if what team it is that you root for, if you're a basketball fan, if you appreciate the game of basketball, you really need to watch this guy play the game of basketball, because if you don't, you're gonna regret it after he's gone, because what he does with the basketball is just, it's almost jaw-dropping when you watch it. It's on a nightly basis, and he does it so nonchalantly that there really aren't words for this. You mentioned his outside shooting, but I mean, he's actually a really, really impressive 3-point shooter. He really is.
He just doesn't take them very often, but he can hit them when he needs to. I mean, he hit that step back 3 to win the game about a week or so ago. I mean, that was insane.
Yeah. And the greatest thing I took from that was not, I mean, if you put aside, winning the game for your team, all his teammates are gathering around this dude like he just won the NBA Finals, and he's literally telling these guys basically, calm down, okay? I mean, we won the game. This isn't where it ends.
Yep.
This is one game. It's that type of awareness of things that it's the intangibles that he also brings. I mean, this is a coach. This is a guy coaching on the court. I mean, they don't have to worry about it. They got 2 coaches, the guy that's actually coaching the team, and you got Joker out there putting people in the position to do what they need to do. It's just, it stuns me.
It's great. It's great to see. I mean, if you think about it, he did pass up. I was going to bring this up, is he passed up Alex English his last game he played in, obviously, in assists. And the stat that really stands out to me is, we all know Alex English. He's a Hall of Famer, tremendous Denver Nugget. He's definitely, I would say, he's definitely a top 10 Nugget, even top 5. I mean, maybe you can talk, you got to kind of think about it. But up there, Hall of Famer. Alex English had 3,679 assists in 837 games. So Joker, when the game was over, he finished it off. He had 3,686, but he only did this in 568 games. That is insane. The difference in games that it is between the two, and like I said, and that's that just shows his greatness right there, because Alex English was a tremendous player. I mean, in my opinion, I think definitely Alex English is top 10 Denver Nugget. Obviously, Joker is probably the greatest Denver Nugget ever with the way he's going. I know I've always kind of still pushed back on Mallow being the greatest because of him changing. He literally changed the Denver Nuggets. I mean, when he came to Denver, that team was awful. I mean, he got him. He was the 3rd pick in that 2003 draft, behind LeBron and Wade. And for him to be able to come in and change that team around and make the Denver Nuggets a contender again, and get to the Western Conference Finals, things like that. I gave Melo tons of props here in Denver. It was crazy just how much. I mean, it made basketball fun here again. You would just put on the Nuggets game because that was just the game that was on. It was just on. You just said whatever. Let's just watch whoever they're playing. Maybe we'll see some magic or something like that. But when Melo came here, he changed that. He changed that whole dynamic of that team. And this is what Jokic is doing, and he's just doing it even better than what Melo did. It's so much fun to watch him because the other thing is we've never had a big man like this. We've had Mutombo in Denver, who was a block machine, and he wasn't the best scorer. He could rebound the ball like crazy, definitely a good shot blocker. But if you think about the centers that have been in Denver, you don't see all-star. You don't really see any of that. Nene was pretty good for a little while there. Camby, I used to be a big Marcus Camby fan. I thought the guy was one of the best defending centers that I got to see in my time. Watch him play. He was really, really good. But none of those guys come close to what we're seeing here. And even going back to like some of the past players, like a David Thompson, who was very, very good. He's definitely a top Nugget ever. What he did for the Nuggets was great too. But what Joker's doing right now, if he can, keep working this Denver team and get him to a position to, get to the finals, even win a finals, that says so much about him because he literally is the heart and soul that Denver Nuggets team.
Yeah, and we've talked about this periodically through the off season last year, even going back to last season, and now we are with about the midpoint of this season. And Joker holding on to 2 consecutive MVPs, and like you and I had talked about, and your dad too at various points. I really felt going into this season, regardless of what Joker did. I mean, if the numbers were outstanding, All-Star game appearance, blah blah blah, maybe they make the playoffs, blah blah blah. If anyone, if names that had been thrown around with the Embiids and the Giannis and whatnot, if these individuals had remotely decent seasons, there was no way Joker was going to three-peat.
Yeah.
And I got that, and I think there's still, I think maybe Joker's forcing people to look at the Nuggets just through his performance, because I really think people look at Denver still sometimes as a cow town. It's the place you don't necessarily go to succeed. You go to get by. But you can't ignore the numbers anymore. You can't do it. I'm sorry. If you do, then you might want to question how the voting is going, because everything that this guy is doing screams third MVP. It screams it. I don't think there's anybody even close right now. Yeah, we can say Giannis. Yeah, I mean, there are four guys
obviously,
who are
like
mixed.
Luka too. Luka is up there. Giannis should be up there. Tatum too. Tatum's been playing great, and his team has played just as well, even better, than the Nuggets, because we'll kind of get into more of the basketball talk here. Like I have, obviously the top two teams in the East and the West, Nuggets being one at 33-13, Boston being 35-12. Both teams over the last 10 games though are 9-1, and they're both playing well. Obviously we've gone over Jokic's stats, stuff like that, but Tatum's been leading the way for Boston with 31-9-5 in his last 10 games, 31-8-4 for the season right now. And these two teams right now are really on a roll right now. What the Nuggets are, is it 18 or was it 19 now? They won straight at home. Is that what it is now? Or did yeah? So
right.
Definitely on a huge roll. Same thing with Boston. Last time they played, obviously the Nuggets played them pretty well. I think they won by double digits, if I'm not mistaken.
They did.
But I do really think right now, watching everything so far, I think that could be what we see in the finals. If it keeps panning out, keeps going the same way, I can definitely see both these two teams being in the finals. They're both deep on the bench wise. They're both playing really good defense. The Celtics kind of faltered there for a little. They picked it right back up though. They were kind of falling off a little bit. I know last podcast we talked about I didn't even have Tatum in one of my best players right now, only because the team was like 5-5. They weren't playing as great as they were in the snap, but they've really found their way now and played great ball. But I do think that this could be a matchup that we see in the finals possibly, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm excited to. For some reason, the Eastern Conference teams have never really fascinated me that much, aside from the Bulls. But that was because of
Yeah.
Michael. I like the Bulls. I do like Milwaukee. I've always liked Milwaukee. Back to when Kareem was the Alcindor and Oscar Robertson in the Bucks, and they won their first title with him. But there's very few teams in the East that I can really attach myself to. And being from North Carolina, I still can't attach myself to the Hornets. I can't get into them. I just can't. But obviously, spending time in Denver, you wind up rooting for the Nuggets, rooting for the Broncos, that type of thing. Um, but like you and I've talked about, and again, a lot of what I talk about, but I always bring up, got to stay healthy, got to stay healthy. Just such a massive
Yeah.
part of any team success, like we're talking about with right now with the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe. With the Nuggets right now, if everything works and everything stays healthy, and like you mentioned, if let's see where everything plays out after the All Star
Yeah.
break. But Memphis and Denver right now look like they're on a collision course for potentially reaching the conference finals. I mean, there'll be some teams that have something to say about that. New Orleans obviously comes to
Well,
mind,
yeah. So
but
yeah,
I'm
Memphis
still.
is definitely another team. In the last 10 games, they're right there with Denver. They're 9-1 also.
Oh yeah, I think they had won 15 straight. I think prior to the loss to the Lakers
Yeah, I
last night.
mean, you could be right. I don't know
I
for
mean, they were
sure.
rolling.
Obviously, they sit at 31-14, second place right now, led by Morant. Last 10 for Morant. He's 28, 3-7. Points, rebounds to assists, and for the season, 27, 5-7. Just playing out of his mind. I like Morant a lot. I think he can definitely lead this team. Adams has been playing really great too. Both sides of the court. He's another thing. But the one thing I was going to kind of throw out, which is crazy, because if you look at the top four teams in the West, it's Denver, Memphis, Sacramento, and the Pelicans. Um,
Yeah.
and if you really think about it, it's crazy because like these are all four teams that have never their track record for being great isn't there. It's a turn of events. You know what I mean? These teams are finally playing, especially with Sacramento. I don't remember, they haven't been this good since what, the Weber years, I guess, when he was there. Um, and then even
Yeah.
the Pelicans, they're on a fall only because obviously with losing Zion, they've been they're three. I think what in the last 10 they're 3-7. McCollum's been kind of
Yeah, they're falling off a little bit.
the leader of that, which Dallas could even kind of jump into that spot next or whatever if they had to. But the other thing is going to the East though. If you look at the top four teams in the East, it kind of brings you back to the olden days because you got Boston, Milwaukee, the 76ers, and Brooklyn. So you kind of think, those top three for sure. You're thinking about the 80s, 80s teams back then and stuff like that, or of
Yeah.
them being in there. So I thought that's kind of cool because, in the East, you got kind of the older teams that used to, be real good, and it kind of brings back the throwback. But then in the West, it's the new school coming in, and they're trying to make a name for themselves now. And that Sacramento team is pretty interesting to me. I like De'Aaron Fox and I like Sabonis. I like both those guys. For sure. The last 10 they've been 7-3, but Sabonis has been leading the way. He's 18, 12, and 7 on the season. The last 10 he's 19, 13, and 9. Points, rebounds, assists, and he's in. He's another one of those guys that's considered basically a center, and obviously he's not doing Jokic things, but he's leading this
Yeah.
team, man. He's been one of the guys that these guys have fall put on. He's putting the team on his back, and the Kings are where they're at. 26-18, third in the West. That says a lot about him and Fox too. I love De'Aaron Fox. He's definitely come a long way, and he's definitely a top point guard in this league right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I like what you said too, but again, you got the tradition in the East, but I really get hyped up and pumped up because we're seeing different teams, at least in one conference, that are really they've struggled for decades,
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
but here they are. They're trying to make a little bit of noise. They've got some good ball clubs. Again, we've got a half a season to play out. Lakers are going to get a little bit better with Davis coming back, you assume. We'll see how that goes, but. Luca, though, I don't know if you had seen this. I didn't really delve into it, but I do know that he's reached out to ownership and management to try to get him a little
Yeah,
more help. Let's put
and
it
they're
that way.
right. They're right
So
underneath New Orleans. I think they're like 25-20, and New Orleans 26-20. So they're just on the cusp of getting in the top four there. And I think Luca's been doing a lot too. But he's another guy. It's same thing like I talked about with Joker. They need to get him some help a lot too.
But I think he's petitioning now for. I think he's looking ahead to the
Yeah,
playoffs. He's trying because you got the trade deadlines coming up, and I think Luke is saying, "Look, guys, I mean, I need
yeah,
this for down the line. We got to get the guys now because this is the problem we're having. We get to the playoffs and it becomes me ball, and I don't have any other people to really not consistently help me
exactly. And you got
out.
to think about like, and
You
then the
know,
other like the thing about the teams in the East. Brooklyn and Milwaukee. They're both still sitting at the top, but they're trying to do this all without their best players. Giannis has still been out. He's been out the last 5 games and stuff like that with the knee
Yep.
problem, and then obviously same thing with KD. He's been out. Was it I don't know, was it the knee or the ankle? He had the issue with. He's been out too. So Kyrie's been kind of leading the way with them. They're 5-5 in the last 10 for Brooklyn. So 500 right now, but they're still playing well. I think they're just trying to wait to get KD back up and going. But Milwaukee, that says a lot about that team, and somebody that I feel for Milwaukee that's really, and not just in Milwaukee, but for his career is really underrated is Drew Holiday. He's been playing
Oh, yeah.
great ball for them, and he's been doing great. I mean, right now for the season, he's 19, 4, and 7 points, rebounds, and assists, but the last 10, he's 21, 4, and 7. So he's kind of about the same numbers, but I feel like he's really amped up this team and kind of taken that leadership role, which has gotten them and kept them in that 2 seed for sure. But when Giannis comes back, him and Holiday together, that's going to be exciting for them. And I, to be honest with you, I don't see them really going lower than 4 at all in this division. I think they'll definitely finish top 4, no matter what.
Yeah, I could see that too. But I tell you what, if it plays out, and it's not for any rhyme or reason, I think it's just because I like the way both individuals play. I like what obviously they bring to their teams and where they're at. Just as skill players in the league itself. When we talk about joking, you talk about Ja. Um, I'm curious to see if potentially Memphis would face off against Golden State in the playoffs. I think
I
I'd like
know.
to see how
Oh,
Klay
yeah, that
Thompson
would. Yeah,
approaches.
that'd be
Just-
interesting. I would like to
there's a
see
lot
that.
of hatred there
Yeah,
between those two teams, and Klay Thompson, he'll tell you, I mean, spot on. He'll get in front of a camera and say, "I hate their
yeah.
guts." I wish we could show the clip. We don't have it, but maybe at some point we can. But back to Joker and Ja. I'm really fascinated by that potential matchup if they meet, hopefully in the conference finals. You got two dominant ball players at their position, two great ball players within the league itself, and I just think it could be just a fantastic series. The only thing I would recommend to Ja is do it seriously. I mean, I get it. You're great at basketball, but this whole boxing thing. I mean, dude. I mean, you're basically like a featherweight. You can't step to the heavyweights with Shannon and expect to do any damage here. You got to back off of that kind of thing, but just chill out on that. Stick to basketball. Don't do the boxing thing. You're gonna get knocked out.
No, definitely, I agree, and I think I think that's the other thing is, all these teams in the West that are, you know, trying to make that push, to the top or whatever. In my opinion, there's just two right now that are kind of outdoing everybody, and that is Memphis and that is Denver. And I think we could definitely see that as the Western Conference championship, and I kind of
Well,
hope we do.
real quick, but yeah, real quick. Bring up your point though, because it's a good point, but it's a good point. I asked you the other day about the coach, Malone with the Nuggets, and I asked you, and or maybe you brought the point up that they don't advance past the first round. So I want you to touch on that because it's a solid point about what they should do with him if the Nuggets can't
Oh
advance.
well, yeah. I mean, in my opinion, yeah. If they get the number 1 or number 2 seed and they lose in the first round, I think Malone does have to go. And I think
Yep.
we've talked about him before, and I've always said, that George Karl, had a few teams, with him, and he was able to make to the Western Conference Finals with a couple of them here in Denver, and he still got let go, and they were, poor performance, things like that. Since we've had Malone as our coach, we've only been to one Western Conference Finals, and that was during the bubble time, which some people out there really don't consider that a season. Sometimes it's got the asterisk next to it or whatever they say, but so if that doesn't really count, or if some people aren't counting it, then that means with Malone, then we've never been to a Western Conference Finals. Um, so I believe, yes, with the season we're having, as well as we're playing, if for some reason the Nuggets, finish out the season strong still, which we hope for, get a 1 or 2 seed, and they lose that first round, I believe Malone should definitely be gone, because he just hasn't been that guy then for us to get us over the hump and move on. And like I said, I'm fine with if he gets to the finals and loses, that's fine. Appearances count, times two. So if you can get there, you learn from that. If you don't win it, and that's where you get better.
What about this, Bud? What if they get to the Western Conference Finals and lose? Are you still holding that he's got to go?
Like I said, you got to kind of going back to the Dallas thing. It's how did we lose though? I mean, what was the problem there? Everything always falls back on the coach. We talked about this before too. Is just how much things fall back on coaches and stuff like that, more than the players. Sometimes the coaches just gotta take the hit on it, even if it's the players not playing well. But they always feel like you should have your team prepared 100% every time you go out there and play. But we know in this day and age right now that's not always the key. Some of these guys want to sit there and have the load management and not play and things like that, which I've never been a fan of that load management. But if that's the way the game is nowadays, then that's the way it's played. But like I said, in my opinion, I think if they do not, if they get the number 1 or number 2 seed and they do not get past that, then I believe it's time that they go a different direction as far as coaching.
Yeah, and I agree with you, but that's a good take. I like that a lot. That's a good take.
All right. Well, so moving on now. Looks like we are going to start getting into a little bit of this thing we like to call college basketball. That March Madness is creeping up on us, Mike, here, huh? So I'd like to kind of get your thoughts here on what we've been seeing, because it's kind of been an insane season so far. Nobody wants to stay in the number 1 seed. Once they get up there, they decide to lose to a team below them, or it just seems like there's a lot of teams losing a lot of games this year, and it makes it more exciting, because you just don't know who's going to make it this year. Usually by this time you can kind of figure out who your shoo-ins are and stuff, but it's not as easy as it looks.
No, and I think, like you said, but it's an open season right now. I think Purdue's actually held longest at number 1 for the most part. Houston's sort of teased it and played around with it, but you and I talked about what we think of Houston right now. Good ball club. I'm still not sold on the conference they're in, but they are a good team. We'll see what they do come playoff or tournament time. They'll obviously get in, but and we talked about this a while back too. With it's nice, and again back to the NBA, and specifically the Western Conference. It's for me anyway, and I think for you too. It's just kind of nice to see some teams that don't typically occupy the top 5, 6, 7 spots in the standing in the
exactly
in the rankings.
Yeah, because I'm looking at this list, and the top 5 right now, it's Houston, Kansas, Purdue, Alabama, UCLA, and that's the list that was out for the week, to start the week in that order, which obviously I feel like Houston's still going to stay at 1. We've talked about it. I have, for me looking at it, yeah, like you said, we're not super high. They're 18-1, but their quality win for me which was a good win in my opinion. They beat Virginia when they were, as a number 2 seed, 69-61, and they did their one loss was to Bama, which has been playing amazing. They're in the top 5 right now, but they just haven't had huge quality wins.
On a side note, Bud, what was the fascination with UConn going undefeated? Where did this?
I don't know either, but I mean, I think, to be honest with you, I think that they looked at the talent and stuff they had and thought that's a possibility. But I don't think anybody thought that this year's would be going the way that it has been. There's teams losing. Games like Gonzaga. Obviously, they lost to LMU, which broke their 75 game home win streak. Which is insane, because here's the thing is,
and a 95 game streak against unranked
yeah, so that's
opponents.
the other thing is that I bring into is it's an unranked opponent too, and you guys lost to them at home. That's that's really not like Gonzaga at all to do something like that. And the other thing is I'm not they're ranked 6th right now. They're 16-4 after that loss. They're gonna probably drop out of the top 10, I would believe. with a loss like that.
You would think so. You
Yeah,
would
because
think
I mean,
so. Um,
obviously from there, I mean, Texas is going to probably move up. Maybe Xavier on that. Tennessee too. Um, but the one team that's kind of interesting to me for sure is Kansas. What has been going on there? Obviously ranked number 2 to start the week. At six, they were 16-1, but throughout the week, they're now 16-3, and they had back-to-back losses to Kansas State and TCU, and that TCU was actually the worst home loss in the last 2 years in the last 2 years. So the
well, I'll tell you what. I'm not, and I won't shy away from this. And it's not, hey, all the props out there to the Rock Chalk Jayhawk fans and all that stuff. Great program. The championships speak for themselves. I get it, but that doesn't break my heart. Watching Kansas lose at home to Kansas State like they did, that doesn't break my heart. You guys, if you're Kansas fans out there, you feel free to reach out to us, and it's not about hate. It's really not. But I'm not a big fan of your head coach. I think Bill Self is a guy who works behind the scenes. He goes about doing things that violate a number of sanctions, or not sanctions, but they're violations straight up as to how he goes about conducting the program. And I don't think that he's received proper punishment for the things that they've been called out on. I don't know why. I don't know if possibly because it's the Kansas University it's their program, and just what they bring to the NCAA as a basketball program. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know, but I think sometimes there's a bias attached to Kansas. Great program, like I said, folks. I'm not knocking your success. Your history speaks for itself, but where it stands right now, I really, it doesn't break my heart to see Kansas lose those heartbreakers, or get a beat down today
Well,
like they
I,
did
I'll tell you
by
what. I'll tell
25
you what. If,
points.
if you guys are Kansas fans and you're a little down, then just switch on over to Kansas State because that team's been on fire. So I mean, there's no hating. I'm just switching over to them and just saying we'll be Kansas State fans now. That's perfectly fine. They
I don't know,
won.
bud. You got some Jayhawkers to go
They won it. They
Wildcat.
won another game today against Texas Tech. They're on a roll, and they just beat Kansas. So who's better? Let's just put it that way. Who's better? So, but kind of moving on to another team is Purdue. They stand at 18-1. That one loss was kind of rough though to Rutgers. That was one
Yeah.
one game that I was a little surprised that they lost there. But obviously Purdue is a front runner to kind of maybe possibly be in the Final Four for sure. Even be a national championship led by Zach Udy. He's averaging 21 and 13 right now. Also to almost 2.5 blocks a game too. Just playing tremendous ball. The kid's amazing for them. But what do you think about Purdue, Mike? You think they have what it takes to take it all the way?
I'll tell you what, but sometimes it's easier with football, like we talked about. You only play so many games. You're playing about 12 or 13 games in a season, so you can get a good feel for a team early in the season to kind of figure if they're going to make the playoffs or not in football. Basketball, it tends to fluctuate a little bit. I think Purdue is a solid ball club, like you just mentioned. I mean, I think they're going to the tournament. I would assume they're going to win the Big Ten tournament when they play it. That'd be my bet. But again, that's the beauty of the tournament itself, like we've always talked about with your dad, or if just you and I are talking, and that's what it offers is you never know what team is going to go down, and it's very rare that all four number one seeds make it to the Final Four. Purdue could be one of those teams that feels the upset, or they could literally win it all. I think they're talented enough to win it
Yeah.
all. I really do. I think they've been the strongest number one thus far, to hold that position, I believe anyway, at this point in the season. Um, I can't see, on paper why they wouldn't potentially win the championship, but that's why we like the tournament, because nothing's guaranteed. If you get a team that's hot, anybody goes
Yeah.
down. Um, but I mean, they're a solid number one, I think.
Definitely, and I think another team that has a good chance of getting a number one seed, come tournament wise, and team that's really been good recently these past few years is Alabama. And looking at
Yeah.
their schedule, they're 17-2 right now. Like I said, they're ranked fourth in the rankings. What they have, which I think they'll probably jump up, possibly to probably three, because I think Purdue and Houston will probably hold that 1 and 2 spots there. But Kansas will go down obviously after that loss.
Yeah.
But those two losses, sorry. But the thing with Bama is their key losses were they haven't lost to anybody. You know, they haven't really lost to an unranked team or nothing. They lost to UConn and they've lost to the Zags. But what's really impressive is the amount of ranked teams that they have beat, which is they've beaten North Carolina as they were a number one seed. They beat Houston as a number one seed when they were there. They beat, let's see, they've also beat Michigan State, Mississippi State, and Arkansas, all while they were ranked too. Those are all wins. So Alabama all season long has played nothing but ranked teams, it seems like, and they just keep overcoming it. Lost to UConn, lost to Gonzaga, which is fine. Gonzaga's still a top 10 team that they show, which we think maybe they could drop down underneath there, but they're still going to be ranked. UConn at the time when they lost to them, where, like you said, they were talking about going undefeated or whatever like that. So that's a big win, for them too. A big loss for them that's not necessarily going to hurt them at that time, I guess I should say. Sorry.
Yeah.
But the big win,
Exactly.
UNC and Houston to beat teams that are both ranked number one like that says a lot about your team. And I think Alabama's definitely up and coming, and I think they'll be around for a while too. They're playing great ball, and I think they have a good chance of being a number one seed. I don't think they can get that overall number one. I think obviously Houston or Purdue will end up getting that, but just to get a number one seed in the tournament is going to be great, and I think that they can definitely be there when it's all said and done at the end of it.
Yeah, but and again, and this is back to all the Kansas fans. So I mean, throwing some love back Kansas's way. Do I like Bill Self? No. Is he a good head coach? He is a good head coach. Kansas, even with the losses, the program speaks for itself. Self is a good coach. It won't stun me one bit. I mean, obviously they're going to be a favorite to win their conference tournament, and it wouldn't surprise me a bit if they're a Final
Yeah.
Four team. They're a good ball club. They're a solid team this year, up and down. They almost always are. And so, come tournament time, you got to know that the Self will have them, in shape and ready to go. So I can see them still potentially being a Final Four team, regardless of their seeding. I mean, they'll be a one or two, I
Yeah.
would think. They're not going to drop.
I don't
that
believe
far.
so either. I think they'll definitely stay up there. Just want to throw out one kind of big thing that I was looking at that I thought was kind of different, because we've been talking about in the NBA, even now college basketball, just the changing of things. And normally when you looked at ranked teams, you think Big East, ACC usually has the most ranked teams, most of the time, get in the tournament, whatever. But right now, from the rankings, the ACC only has 3 teams. The Big East has 4 teams, which is also tied with the SEC with 4. And the number one team that has the most or the conference is the Big 12. Actually has 6 teams in the top 25 right now. So the Big 12 and the SEC are kind of coming back now. Usually, when you think about SEC, things like that, you only think football, but SEC is coming in basketball now. The Big 12 is making a huge run in this now too, but ACC, Big East, they're starting to fall a little bit, and that's a little bit different than what we're used to.
Well, and touching on your SEC thing, bud, and like I was mentioning too before we jumped on tonight, women's basketball on the SEC, they've got South Carolina sitting at 1, they've got LSU sitting at 3, Tennessee, and my point that I'm making here is that for the first time in women's SEC history in basketball, they have 3 teams currently at 7-0. That's never happened before. Tennessee's not ranked, but it's obviously a good basketball team. So back to your point with the SEC, this is a good conference in both leagues, men and women. So props to them. I mean, they're doing some things right there. We know what they do in football, but basketball is obviously back there. And you
Sounds
got
good,
Alabama.
definitely. Well, definitely had another good episode here, Mike. We got into a lot more than what we have been recently. I hope everybody enjoyed this for sure. Like I said, we definitely wanted to get more into talking about more sports for you guys than what we have been. Obviously, we got a couple of games tomorrow for football wise. We're definitely going to try to go over the games again next week for sure. I'd like for us to possibly get in a little more in depth about college basketball a little bit more too, Mike. Kind of see where we're at next week with the new rankings out and stuff like that. Kind of see where everybody's kind of at on that. But hope everybody enjoyed. Definitely, like we said each time, reach out to us. Let us know what you guys think. Let us know how you guys feel about stuff we talked about and things like that too. We're always up for it, guys. Definitely reach out to us.
Yeah, as always, folks, we greatly appreciate the time you take to tune in and let us, speak on sports and everything that we enjoy talking about in regards to that. That's always one of our biggest thrills, whether we're watching it or talking about it, and having a chance to get on here and for myself personally to do that with my godson is just like the biggest thrill. But yes, please, as Anthony mentioned. Obviously criticisms, praise, comments, critiquings, those type of things are greatly appreciated. And we always work to make sure that we utilize those to hopefully produce a better show and a better quality effort, every week. Potentially as we go forward, Bud and I have been doing the shows essentially around the same time. Saturdays is pretty much the day we've designated as our broadcast day. But as we move forward right now, we have been doing like a 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock type thing, depending on your time zone. But as we move forward right now, Anthony and I were talking about that. And we may be, obviously, as early as next Saturday, looking to time shift, if you will, and move it up a little bit. So what we might be looking at is, obviously, if I looked at this right, it would be, where did I have those written down?
About
So what would happen
5:30
is
Mountain Standard Time.
Yeah. So it'd be 5:30 Mountain Time, 4:30 Pacific Time, 6:30 Central Time, and obviously it's 7:30 Eastern Time. So that's kind of what we're looking at. But just to let you folks know that that's what we think we're going to go ahead and do. So if you tune in, we're already in there talking about stuff, and you wonder what happened. Well, that's because we were going to make these changes. No real reason for it. Just it works out a little better for both of us, in regards to scheduling and stuff like that, to maybe bump it up just a little bit. So Anthony was thinking, and I was thinking too, we'd just go ahead and make that change next Saturday. So those will be the new times. Again, as Anthony pointed out, please, if you like what we're doing, please just hit that like button, subscribe button, and any comments, they're always appreciated. But other than that, Bud, as always, great time. Appreciate the conversation.
Definitely.
Folks, thank you so much for your time and your viewing. And
thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful night. Have a great rest of next week, and we will be talking to you guys later. Everybody, stay safe out there.